than making the fucking new guy clean it up, you know?
Yeah.
The minute the camera showed that, I knew it. The minute he found it, you see him puking somewhere, sure enough. Well, at least he made it out of the tank before throwing up.
Yeah.
You know? You gotta give him that much. He did make it that far. Oh, where's my milk? I don't want that. Panther, buddy. Pastries.
Down and came up.
Yeah. Good night, Spiky. That one we're gonna open the door, huh? Wants to check out what's going on down there.
You know things have been going on down here.
More activity to come. Tomorrow, anyway.
Damn, it's after 1 o'clock in the fucking morning. So much for an early night. Poor Mikey gonna be a zombie tomorrow. Yeah, that's true. We were out of here at like a little, I think almost 2 o'clock last week. Me, I'm just gonna sleep late. Good night, Mike.
See you later.
Yeah, next week maybe.
I'll be going to Florida. I'm going to Florida.
That's right, Scott will be in Florida.
We're off next week.
Yep. Look at this, there's frost on top of the car. Then your windows open back in. So what kind of car you gotta drive up in?
2009 Camry.
Same exact car.
Same you and Jane has.
It's too bad the Cadillac doesn't have a tow hitch. Rent the U-Haul tow dolly, whatever, stick it on there, bring the Camry up that way, and drive the Caddy.
Like I said, it'll be an entirely different trip. Sell that thing while it's still new and get low mileage.
Fuck it, just drive the shit out of it.
It's an option. Need to ruin it in the salt and the snow.
Well, what the fuck, are you gonna ruin something, you know? You drove the Buick how long in salt and snow? Years.
That's different.
Not really, it's kept going, didn't it?
This is a brand new car. That was not.
Yeah, well, it still didn't rot to shit. It just got banged to shit.
Well, yeah, it's because it was a Virginia car. It wasn't in the salt and snow like this thing is.
That's one thing, is that the Shermans were outclassed by the German tanks throughout the war. Big time. But the difference was when a German tank was knocked out, however it was knocked out, it was gone. When they knocked out one of ours, we built 10 more. So it's just like what the Russians did. The Russians had a better tank than we did too, in the T-34, but when the Germans blew one up or whatever, the Russians made 10 more of them. Threw some fucking farm boys into them with a quickie course on how to run a tank and sent them out there. The German industry never fully got itself in gear anyway during the whole fucking war. I mean, toward the end, Speer did get things pretty well organized, but you know, like in Russia and the US and the UK, women were heavily utilized in heavy industry, while the Germans were holding them back. You know, Nazi philosophies about the mother and the home and the children and all that shit. And you know, the first thing our government did after the Japanese attack was begin, you know, organizing American industry to war production. Everything. No more civilian cars, no more refrigerators, no more nothing for the duration. Wow, it's pretty crowded over here tonight. What the fuck's going on? Yeah. We're going full blast. While the Germans didn't really do that until 1942, 43, or right in there. You know, where they'd already been at war since 1939. So what the fuck is going on? I know. Didn't quite get everything organized up and running. They had a very disorganized government at the top. Hitler had a ruling style that was more like assign the same job to 2 or 3 different guys, let them fight it out with each other to please him. You know, that was his government style. But the Sherman was better than our previous tanks, that's for damn sure. Because while the Germans and the Russians, and even the British and the French, were organizing full tank corps and all that shit, we didn't really do that until, the World War was already on. You know, by 1941, there was no actual dedicated tank corps. Each, you know, the Army, the Marines, they all designed their own, the cavalry even, all designed their own tanks. You know, and each was different from the other. Chaotic fucking system. Didn't work very well. It wasn't until the war was really cooking that they finally organized things properly. And shit, in 1940, while the Germans were rampaging across France, U.S. conscript soldiers, you know, who had been called up for a year, were practicing with wooden mock-ups of tanks. Didn't have tanks. They put plywood on cars and called it a tank. You know? So there was a lot of catching up to do. Of it, after World War II, we sold a lot of those tanks to Israel. And they upgraded the shit out of them. Completely redesigned them, really. By the time they were done, the result really didn't look like a Sherman anymore. But they kicked some ass with those tanks.
Cadillac Engines. That's
the originals, yeah. I don't know if they were still using them by the time the Israelis got them, but yeah.
It was a Cadillac V12, right?
I believe it was
a V8 or a V12?
Probably a V8. I think maybe 2 V8s. I forget exactly. Hydromatic transmission, all that shit. But they were 1,000 times better than what they had in World War I. You know, those first British tanks, where the engine was right in the middle of the fucking cabin, without any insulation whatsoever, and it got up to 150 degrees in there, and just 8 or 10 men crammed in there trying to work everything. It's just extremely difficult life. And of course, the Germans ended up using tanks from every country they overran. They were using French tanks, they were using Czech tanks, Polish tanks, a few that they had, and even captured Russian tanks. They were pressing T-34s they captured into use.
The cop is waiting up here.
Mike said they've been out.
I think it would have been flashed by now.
No, not necessarily. It's against the law to do that. Not everybody will. He's seen the cop over here a few times, he said. guys that were right up there, the tip of the spear types, you know, they saw a lot of really ugly shit.
Florida trips going down, coming back up, then I gotta go back down with furniture.
3 if you get in the car.
That's the third trip. That's undetermined yet, or to be announced. But I will be around for the car show.
Alright.
That's
Always the first weekend in May.
the second, right?
I don't know the actual day of whatever day
Well,
the first
actually, it's
week.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? Car show.
Yeah.
It's 3 days, right?
Well, Sunday's our day, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that opens Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah, it's 3 days.
I gotta look it up online anyway. But it's every time. It's always the first weekend in May.
Right. It's first, first, second, and third,
Yeah.
and then Stormville's not till the end of the month.
Yeah, that's always Memorial Day. Memorial Day
And
weekend.
then we hit all 3 of them. Stormville, Elephant's Trunk, and that little one if it's open.
Yeah, you know.
We always seem to do better at the 2 before we get to Stormville. Sometimes.
And then the militarized zone we visited. What do we find there? Oh yeah, the Japanese rifle we found there.
And a Victrola.
And then we went to that maze thing. The old maze department store there. Somebody told me they saw a Victrola there.
Oh, yeah. Where
IX.
else? Yeah.
Yeah, Artie Meyer told me he saw an IX. He knows what it looks like if he has one.
I know there's a stand-up model for $250.
Yeah, I don't have room for one of those.
Yeah, it's the right price, but it's...
I would only buy those if they were dilapidated and good for parts. You know, that's about
That's
it.
in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I have one already that's in good shape. One that's in not so good shape.
I'm always on the lookout.
Oh, yeah. Well, where is that one located?
Bridgeport,
Oh.
in a junk shop.
Yeah, they're around. There was one in that junk shop in Newburgh, too.
Yeah.
It was a 210, a Model 210, actually.
Yeah, I remember that day. They said, too bad that my brother's not here, brother-in-law's not here, and then he said he's got one somewhere, and then later come to find out that was
Same fucking shop, yeah.
And then, yeah. That was the with the chrysanthemum, right? The Japanese, the Osaka.
The Arisaka, yes.
Yeah. What did you get it for? Do you remember?
99, I think it was 250, I think. 200 or 250, maybe 200. No, it was a bundle deal. I bought
record player.
the record player, some records, the rifle. Was there anything else? I don't remember. Oh, ammo cans.
The ammo cans.
Yes, all for $250.
Off in the
Now the record player was a piece of shit, but
the stylus off it and the
the reproducer head was a Victrola number 4, which I am currently using, fully rebuilt now by me, on the Victrola I got at Stormville there. Remember that one was all smashed?
and then the ammo cans used,
Oh yeah, they've been used long. So they're full of cigars actually.
and then what was the rifle itself worth?
Oh, Arisaka 99s these days, just in like that, they're selling about $350, $400
Huh.
easily, and prices are climbing on them. Collectors are finally discovering them, so there's no more cheapies on those. You know, it used to be you can. I actually had some of them come my way for free. I didn't even pay for them at all because they take that. I don't want that shit. You know? Used to be one of the most common rifles around because so many came home with GIs and shit. And then after the war, they were brought in a surplus also. You know, for a few dollars at the hardware store, you could buy an Arisaka if you wanted. You know.
In the early 50s?
Oh yeah. But literally, like every GI that came home from the South Pacific brought home some kind of Japanese rifle or sword or whatever, a bayonet or something. I've been told by some veterans, big piles of fucking Japanese rifles, just take one. I have one that came directly from a Tokyo arsenal. The man I bought it from, you know, he was occupation army. He walked in, literally, said, "You want one? Go get it." They're in there. It has a ground mount because they were doing that at that time, and just take it off that pile over there. They're done with. Whatever one you want, take two if you want. We don't care, you know. And he did.
What kind of condition?
Oh, beautiful condition. Yeah, that's a Type 38 actually. It's an older version, 6.5 millimeter. It's all matching.
They had all these weird rounds, didn't they?
Well, they had 6.5 millimeter, which wasn't weird. It was just, I mean, the Swedish used 6.5 also. Different cartridge with same diameter bullet. You know, it was around. It's what they used from like the time of the Russo-Japanese War all the way up to the early days of 1941. Then they switched over to 30 caliber. But that was a different rifle. That was a Type 99. It was redesigned for a new era. It had initially it had a chrome line bore, which was a big advancement for that era. Even our Garands didn't have chrome line bores. It had anti-aircraft sights. It had a monopod. Now, all of these things vanished pretty quickly as production needed to be ramped up and resources were becoming slim. So by 1943, you could kiss the anti-aircraft sights goodbye. The monopod was history, you know, and all that. And there was no more chrome in the bore, you know, because they were out of chromium needed for other things. And by 1945, you barely had a rifle at all. You had something that looked like it was made by files by hand, which in some cases it was. So we were bombing the shit out of their factories, and they were making these things underground. As best they could, anyway they could.
Setting Tokyo on fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we firebomb many Japanese cities.
Let the wind do the rest.
Yep. Well, you build your houses out of rice paper and wood, you know. Fire could be a real problem for you. And of course, nuclear fire as well. Well, it cannot be said they did not ask for it. They did everything possible to ask for it, and they did start the war, you know. We didn't ask you to bomb Pearl Harbor. We didn't ask you to invade Manchuria and China and all the rest of that shit. You did that on your own. And Burma and Singapore and all the other countries.
Philippines.
Philippines, yeah. We didn't ask you to do that. You fucked with us. They were ramping up to resist us every inch of the way on the home islands. Arming every last civilian, you know, mining everything else. We would have lost 1 million men invading the Japanese home islands. There's no doubt about that. But we had a president with the balls to use the bomb. Say that about Harry Truman. He didn't fuck around.
FDR didn't even tell him about that, and he was vice president.
Yeah. That was a very closely kept secret. Well, at that time, the vice presidency was really just a ceremonial position, basically. Yeah, you're the president of the Congress and all that shit, but you really weren't doing anything. Just sitting there, warming the chair, that's all. You're only there just in case. They didn't bother to tell you anything. They used you for ribbon cuttings and bullshit like that the president didn't want to do. In some cases, a little bit, like today, but, unfortunately, Biden is a little bit more involved in the government than in previous vice presidencies, in previous years. And Joe's a schmuck who can't keep his mouth shut or his hands to himself. I mean, come on, if you're going to be schmoozing the ladies, do it. Why would you do it on national TV with your wife can fucking see it, What the hell's the matter with you? Even Bill wasn't that brazen.
Think she'll get in?
Probably.
God.
Because the American population is pretty fucking stupid, Scott. They remember the prosperity of the Clinton years when they had a good job, they had money, the world wasn't insane with all this terrorism shit. And they equate that as, the name Clinton with all of that. And it doesn't really matter what the Clinton is. They're going to think she can magically make it all better. She can't, of course, and we know that. But to the average fucking sheeple out there, sure.
And all the women will vote for her.
Oh yeah, minorities, women, men, they're all gonna do it. They're all gonna, because the Democrats give them a line of bullshit. Get us in, and we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna make it all better. We're gonna make sure prosperity and chicken in every pot, and all that bullshit. But it's all bullshit. As we saw when Obama came in, he didn't make anything better. Not really. He's made it considerably worse, if anything. They don't learn. Unless the Republicans can come up, or the Independent Party can come up with a strong, viable, real candidate.
What about Jeb?
No, nobody wants another Bush presidency. It's too much baggage there. We need fresh thinking, fresh blood. We've had 8 years of a political hack, basically. Now we need someone who can clean up the mess. I don't see that person yet. We need somebody who had Bill Clinton's charisma, no fucking baggage,
Ross Perot.
no skeletons in the closet.
I think
Ross is too old to run.
I thought he would have been interesting.
He probably would have been, but unfortunately, he is now in his 90s, and he's not going to be running for president. His generation is no longer going to be in public office anymore. Technically, somebody of our generation could be president. I mean, Obama is very close to being our generation. He's only a few years older than us, but the next president could be somebody in their 40s. 45, 46, 42. That's a frightening thought. And the next president's going to be inheriting enormous challenges. A faltering economy, a world situation. Well, look at that.
Yeah. What a tree. Yeah, you see it fell down his throat.
That must be why they had the fire trucks blocking the road, I guess.
Ah, that's freshly cut, too.
Yeah, they just did that.
When that happened.
A really catastrophic world situation. We're still fighting Islam.
That'll never go away.
No, probably not until we kill every last one of them, basically, is what it seems like it's what we're going to have to do. And totally waste every fucking country over there. The Obamacare mess that has to be cleaned up, that's unworkable. It probably will be disastrous. The multi-trillion-dollar national debt. That's going to be a big hurdle, too. Well, another mess to clean up. Plus all the old messes, too.
Couldn't believe that. Do you have health coverage? You better get it. They're going to penalize you. And I'm like, yeah, well...
They fucked up Medicare. That's going to be underfunded. The Social Security, that's going to disappear before we ever get there. Clinton want the job.
Yeah, Hillary will get it.
But Hillary is not Bill. Bill's a pretty astute politician. She's not. She's stupid. She makes stupid mistakes. Clumsy mistakes. Bill would never have been caught in that email shit. He doesn't even have email. I think he'd like sent like 3 emails his entire presidency, some shit like that. You know, he keeps away from stuff like that. He never would have lied about that shit either. And clumsy enough to be caught. And that's the thing. And there's a lot of negative publicity about her out there. You know, people who have been her associates, who have worked with her.
So she's a horrible fucking bitch.
Yes, exactly what they say about her, and that gets around. You know, nobody wants to deal with somebody like that at a high level, so that could hit her too. That and outside of New York and the Northeast, she does not have good poll numbers. And New York, only in the city does she have good poll numbers. The rest of the state does not particularly like her.
No.
It's New York City that elected her to the fucking Senate from New York, not, you know, upstate and shit. So there's that hurdle too. How are you going to convince Middle America and the South to vote for you if you're Hillary Clinton? You know, there are some extreme negative, you know, responses to her out there. And she may not get the nomination within her own party, because there are other interested parties too on the Democratic side.
She'll get it.
Maybe. But I think there might be some skeletons in the closet ready to come tumbling out. You know? The whole email thing, the Benghazi shit, all of that. She's careless and stupid.
So
doesn't
what's her
cover
answer
tracks.
about Benghazi? What's her answer at that?
Oh, it doesn't matter. That's what she says, you know. That, and she may have health issues too. And she's getting older. You know, she's a boomer. She's pushing up on 70 now. She's in her 60s. Do we really want, at this particular juncture in time, another national leader who is, you know, elderly basically, and could be laid low by the infirmities of age? Everything from fucking dementia to cancer to whatever might come along her way.
Reagan at the very end there was struggling right at the very end.
Yes, he was. You know, but Clinton's had a few health issues going on over the last year or so that really weren't quite explained. Some of which might have been bullshit to get her out of subpoenas and stuff like that or whatever, but some clearly weren't. You know, whatever else you could say about Barack Obama, nobody would consider him infirm. He's very healthy and, you know, energetic and with it. He's stupid, but he's not, you know, that way because of, you know, dementia or something like that.